tomato swirls. So the first thing we're going to do is to prepare our tin. It can be a square one like this, or maybe you'd like to use a round one. It doesn't matter, but the first thing we do is just grease it and then line it with parchment paper. Now the parchment paper's been cut into a large square here, and the diagonal cuts about 6-7 centimetres long have been made in the corners. It's just rough, but it means that you're able to put the paper in and it will lie very nicely and stick to the grease in the tin. If you want to do a round one, obviously you don't do it the same way, but just putting a circle of the parchment paper in the bottom is sufficient. Now, basically, we're going to be making bread, and it's going to be exactly the same as you've made before. So in the bowl, I've got 300 grams of strong plain flour, half a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar to activate the yeast, and 1 sachet of yeast. And I put it very carefully away from the sugar and the salt. Mixing that in, just like we've done before, and then 200 millilitres of hand hot water. Check that it is exactly 200 millilitres. And then what we've done before is half added, stir with a blunt knife or a palette knife, add half of what is left, stir again, add half of what is left, and then if we still need some more, and I do, it's still a little bit dry, I can put half of that in, and I'm going to need all of it, so I'll put all of that in now and mix it round. We do it like that, so just in case we've not got the measurement 200, or we've put slightly too much flour in the bowl, then we're not going to get things wildly wrong. Sorry, not enough flour in the bowl. Now, there we go. Now we take this out. This can then go away to the sink unit. Any bits, put them into the dustbin and soak, so that the washing up is much easier at the end. There. Now, the kneading process. If your dough is excellent, you won't need to add any flour onto the table. However, most of us will need just a little bit, possibly, on our hands, and then knead. And the kneading process is exactly the same as we've done before. And so we're getting a nice elastic mixture. What we're doing is developing the gluten strands. Remember, there's a lot of gluten in the strong plain flour. It's got about a 16% gluten content, which is much higher than other flours. So it means that when we add water or hydrate the mixture, it's going to create lots and lots of gluten and enable our bread to have a lovely strong structure when it sets in the oven. Right, and we keep doing this now for 10 minutes. Once you've kneaded the bread dough, it will go very smooth and it will be very elastic, and it should be quite easy to roll. So we're going to be rolling this out to a square or a rectangle possibly. So we put it into a brick shape on the floured table, and then a little flour on the rolling pin, and off we go. Same mantra, roll, turn, roll, turn. You really must make sure it's not sticking to the table. Now, as you roll it out, you'll see the elasticity of the dough. That's the gluten strands being developed, and they're springing back. As soon as you roll it, they spring back. So it gets to be quite hard work in the end. But with a bit of force, you can get the dough to roll out and remain in a rectangular shape. The good thing is, because it's bread dough, you can just squash it in and make it into a nice shape there. So there's our rectangle, nearly done. A little bit more. It's quite thin, it's quite thinly rolled. Quite a big rectangle. Now, at this point, we've got to think about fillings. You probably would want to use some ordinary tomato puree, or you could use garlic puree if you wanted to, and you spread that all over the top. Not too much. I'm actually using a pesto here. It's a red pesto, which has actually got a bit of ricotta cheese in it, and I'm going to use that. You could use a tapenade if you wanted, which is olives in a sort of spreadable paste form. That's entirely up to you. Whatever you want to spread on. Like I say, this is a pesto, so I'm spreading it right to the edges. Now, at that point, you can sprinkle things on that you might really like. You could put some olives in. You could put some sun-dried tomatoes chopped up. It's up to you, or you just go with the plain old tomato puree. And then we sprinkle some cheese, a handful of cheese. Easiest way is just to put it all in the middle and then spread it out right to the sides. Doesn't matter about the front and the back, but right to the sides, the edges here. And at this point we then, and this is where you'll find out if you've stuck your dough to the table. Hopefully you haven't. You roll it up like a Swiss roll, like that. Done. Now, at this point you need a sharp knife, and you have to decide on how many you're going to fit in your tin. For the square tins, we go 3 rows of 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. For the circular tins, we usually go 7. 6 around the outside and 1 in the middle. It just depends what shape and size you are using, tins you're using. So I've got to get from this, I've got to get 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it into 3, first of all. Very careful not to cut the table. 1, 2, 3, and then 3 again. So we should end up with 9. Be very, very light with this. You don't want any damage to the tabletops, but you do need to have a sharp knife. If you've got a board at home you can roll out on, that would be particularly good. There we go, and that one at the end. Now, there, should have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we turn them over and we put 1 in the corner, make it round. We get another one. They're not quite touching yet. They will do later. Make them rounded. Round them off because they've got a flat bottom. Round them off, tip them over. Round it off, tip it over. Round it off so it's a nice shape, tip it over. And hopefully if your dough rises nicely, they're going to fill the tin and they'll all join up to form a tear and share. There we go, and that's the last one. That's 9. When we've got that, you cover them, usually with a little bit of cling film, or if you're at home, you could use a dampened dishcloth or a tea towel, and you put that, so they see, over the top, and pop them in a warm place. Actually, I'll get a better one than that. Let me see. This one will do. There we go. Just over the top and leave them in a warm place to rise. If you're very short of time, like in school, what we usually do is to use our grill unit. The grill unit is not on. What it is warm in there because the oven underneath is on. And at this point, you would make sure that your oven is preheated to gas mark 6 or 200 degrees centigrade. At this point, washing up. In all sides, so they will now go into the oven. We don't have to do anything else to them. Collect an oven cloth and pop them into the oven. Oven set at gas mark 6, and they will take at least 20 minutes, possibly 25. So set the timer for that. have a look. Now, there we go. Done. Need to be very, very careful how you get them out of the tin because the oil will be very hot. So let's put that in there for washing up. And you can tell when they're done because on the bottom, when we take them out of the paper, on the bottom they're going to sound hollow. Also all joined together. I'd let them cool now as they are before you start to break them off. That way they won't go too doughy. If you cut or break any dough when it comes straight out of the oven, you're likely to compress the dough and it will be very unpleasant. So just leave them there to cool. And these have cooled quite a bit, just a little bit warm. They're obviously cooked on the base, and that will be the basis for your tear and share loaf. Now, just put them on there. And that's your cheese and tomato swirls finished.